50,000 years ago, the world was a colder, crueler place. The wind howled through jagged valleys, carrying the scent of frost and something fouler. Something like decay, like blood, like secrets buried in the earth. In a forgotten corner of what we now call Europe, a small band of prehistoric humans huddled in a cave, their fire spitting embers into the dark. They were hungry, always hungry. But tonight they would feast. And what they ate, God, what they ate would haunt the bones of the earth forever. My name's Clara, and I'm an archaeologist. Well, I was. I don't dig anymore, not after what I found in that hollow, not after what I saw. Let me take you back to that summer when I was part of a team excavating a site in the Carpathian Mountains. We'd heard rumors, whispers from locals about a cave that sang at night, about shadows that moved without light. They called it the Hollow of the Forgotten. Superstition, I thought, just old stories. But when we found the cave sealed by a landslide for millennia, my curiosity got the better of me. We broke through, and what we uncovered wasn't just bones or tools, it was a story. A nightmare. The cave was vast, its walls glistening with moisture that smelled faintly of iron. Our flashlights carved paths through the dark, revealing crude paintings, stick figures with hollow eyes, mouths open in what looked like screams. And then we saw it. A pit, perfectly circular, dug into the cave floor. It was filled with bones, human bones. Thousands of them gnawed and splintered, some still bearing the marks of teeth. Not animal teeth, human teeth. I should have turned back then. My gut screamed at me to run, but curiosity is a cruel master. We cataloged the bones, took samples, and found something else. Charred remains of what looked like plants, seeds, and something unidentifiable. A dark, tar-like substance clung to the edges of the pit, sticky even after 50,000 years. Lab tests later showed it wasn't plant or animal. It was something else entirely, something that didn't belong. That night, as we camped near the site, I couldn't sleep. The wind carried strange sounds, low, guttural chants that seemed to come from the cave itself. My colleague Tom laughed it off as exhaustion. "You're hearing things, Clara," he said, but his eyes darted nervously toward the cave's entrance. I didn't tell him about the dreams that started that night, dreams of standing in that cave 50,000 years ago, surrounded by gaunt, hollow-eyed figures. They were eating, devouring, and they weren't alone. The first clue came from the pollen samples. Mixed with the bones were traces of a plant that shouldn't have existed, a hallucinogenic root that modern science had never documented. It was potent, mind-altering, and according to our chemist, capable of inducing visions so vivid they'd feel real. The prehistoric humans in that cave weren't just eating to survive. They were eating to see, to connect with something beyond. But what? I started piecing it together, cross-referencing the bones with the cave paintings. The figures weren't just hunting animals. They were hunting each other. Cannibalism wasn't new in prehistoric studies, but this was different, ritualistic, deliberate. The bones in the pit weren't from enemies or strangers, they were from their own kin, mothers, brothers, children. And the tar-like substance? It wasn't food, it was a catalyst, a key. The dreams got worse. In them, I was one of them, a woman with calloused hands and a gnawing hunger that wasn't just in my stomach. It was in my soul. We gathered around the pit, the fire casting shadows that danced like demons. The root was bitter, burning my throat as I chewed, but then the world shifted. The cave walls pulsed, alive with eyes that watched us. And then it came, a presence. Not human, not animal, something older, hungrier, whispering promises of power, of survival. If we gave it what it wanted. And what it wanted was us. I woke up screaming, my tent soaked with sweat. Tom was gone, his sleeping bag was empty, his boots still by the fire. I called his name, my voice echoing off the mountains, but the only answer was that chant, louder now, coming from the cave. I should have waited for the others, but I grabbed my flashlight and ran inside. The air was thick, heavy with that iron stench. My beam caught something on the cave floor. Footprints, fresh ones, bare feet leading to the pit. That's when I saw him. Tom, standing at the edge of the pit, his eyes glassy, his hands smeared with that tar-like substance. He was muttering, words I couldn't understand, but they weren't English. They weren't any language I knew. "Clara," he whispered, his voice not his own. "They're still here. They never left." Before I could move, he stepped into the pit and vanished. Not fell. Vanished. The bones didn't even shift. I don't remember running out of the cave, but I must have, because I woke up in the hospital a week later. The team said they found me unconscious at the camp, babbling about shadows and chants. Tom was never found. The official report called it a hiking accident, but I know better. I know what those people ate 50,000 years ago. They ate the root to see the other side. They ate their own to appease it. And they ate that tar-like substance to bind themselves to it. The worst part, the lab lost the samples. The tar, the bones, the pollen, all gone like they never existed. The cave was sealed again, this time with concrete, but I know it's not enough. I still hear the chants some nights, faint but unmistakable. And last week I found a speck of that tar-like substance on my doorstep. It wasn't there before. They're still hungry and they know my name. "50,000 years ago, the world was a graveyard of ice and shadow. In the endless tundra of what's now Siberia, a clan of prehistoric humans scratched out a living, their bodies scarred from the cold, their minds frayed by hunger. They were survivors, but survival came at a cost. They ate things no human should, things that weren't food, things that spoke. My name's Ethan, and I learned this the hard way. I'm not an archaeologist anymore. I can't even look at bones without hearing them. Let me tell you why. It started with a dig in the Yamal Peninsula, a frozen wasteland where the permafrost holds secrets older than time. Our team was small, just me, my mentor, Dr. Lena Korsakov, and a couple of graduate students. We were chasing a tip about a burial site, a place the locals avoided, calling it the mouth of the earth. They said the ground there hummed like a voice trapped under the ice. I didn't believe in curses, but the way the wind moaned through the tundra made my skin crawl. We found the site after weeks of digging, a shallow depression in the permafrost packed with bones. Not just animal bones, reindeer, mammoth, wolf, but human ones too. The human bones were different. They were hollowed out, the marrow scraped clean, and the ends bore tiny, deliberate cuts like someone had been savoring them. Lena called it ritualistic cannibalism, but her voice shook when she said it. I noticed something else. A pile of small, blackened stones near the bones arranged in a spiral. They weren't stones, they were seeds, charred but intact, from a plant that didn't exist in any database. That night, as we cataloged our finds in the tent, I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest. Lena was obsessive, poring over the seeds, muttering about their chemical makeup. "These aren't just plants, Ethan," she said, her eyes wild. "They're psychoactive. They'd make you see things, hear things." I laughed it off, but when I went to bed, I dreamed of the tundra. I was one of them. A man with frost-bitten fingers kneeling in the snow, cracking open a bone with a stone. The marrow was warm, slick, and it whispered as I ate. "More," it said. "Give us more." I woke up gasping, my mouth tasting of copper. The tent was empty. Lena's cot was cold, her notebook open to a sketch of the spiral seed pattern. I grabbed my flashlight and stumbled outside, calling her name. The tundra was silent, but the ground, it was humming. A low rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat. I followed it to the dig site, my boots crunching on frost. There was Lena kneeling by the bone pile, her hands smeared with dirt and something darker. She was eating one of the seeds, her lips stained black. "Lena, what the hell?" I shouted, but she didn't look up. Her eyes were empty, like she was somewhere else. "They're talking, Ethan," she whispered. "The bones, they want to be heard." Before I could grab her, she dug her hands into the bone pile, pulling out a femur and cracking it open with a rock. The sound was wet, sickening, and then I heard it. A voice, not from Lena, but from the bone itself. It was faint, guttural, chanting words I couldn't understand but felt in my gut. I dragged Lena back to the tent, her body limp, her skin ice cold. She wouldn't stop muttering about the marrow, about how it knew things. The grad students were freaked, but we couldn't leave. The nearest outpost was 100 miles away and a storm was rolling in. That night, the humming got louder, seeping into my dreams. I saw the clan again, gathered around a fire, their faces gaunt, their eyes glowing like embers. They weren't just eating marrow for food, they were eating it to listen, to commune with something buried deep in the earth, something that demanded sacrifice. By morning, Lena was gone again. This time, we found her tracks leading to a crevasse a mile from camp. The crevasse was narrow, barely wide enough for a person, but it went deep. Too deep for our lights to reach the bottom. At the edge, we found her jacket, torn and stained with that black seed residue, and there, carved into the ice, was the spiral pattern. The humming was deafening now, vibrating in my chest. One of the students, Jake, started clawing at the ice, babbling about hearing his dead sister's voice. I had to knock him out to stop him from jumping in. We abandoned the site, dragging Jake back to civilization. Lena was never found. The official report blamed hypothermia, but I know better. I know what those people ate 50,000 years ago. They ate the seeds to open their minds. They ate the marrow to hear the earth's secrets, and they gave their own to keep it fed. The worst part, I brought one of those seeds back, tucked in my pocket by accident. I burned it, but sometimes when it's quiet, I still hear the humming. And last night I found a spiral scratched into my kitchen table. I didn't put it there, they're still listening, and they know where I am. "50,000 years ago, the forests of what's now southern Africa were alive with whispers. Not the kind you hear with your ears, but the kind that crawl into your bones and make your heart race. A small tribe of prehistoric humans lived there, their lives bound to the rhythm of the hunt and the pulse of the earth. They were starving, always on the edge of extinction. But they found something in the forest, something that promised to save them, something they shouldn't have touched. My name's Sarah, and I used to study ancient diets. I don't anymore. Not after what I found in those roots, not after what they showed me. It was a routine expedition in the Drakensberg Mountains, a place where the cliffs hide caves like secrets. Our team was mapping a new site, a rock shelter untouched since the Stone Age. The locals warned us to stay away, talking about a bleeding tree that grew in the forest, its sap red as blood. They said the cave was cursed, that the people who lived there ate the earth's heart and paid for it. I thought it was folklore, but when we found the shelter, my curiosity turned to dread. The cave was small, its walls covered in ochre paintings, twisted figures with outstretched hands, their mouths dripping red. In the center was a hearth, filled with ash and fragments of roots, thick and gnarled, unlike anything I'd seen. The roots were stained with something dark, almost crimson, and they smelled wrong, like meat left to rot. Mixed with them were bones, human bones, some still clutching scraps of dried flesh. The cuts on them were precise, like a butcher's work. My colleague Marcus gagged when he saw it. They were eating each other, he said. But it wasn't just that. They were eating the roots too. We sent the roots to the lab and the results were impossible. They weren't plants, not entirely. They had traces of hemoglobin like blood and a chemical profile that suggested they were alive in a way plants shouldn't be. The lead botanist, Dr. Ngozi, called them parasitic, but she couldn't explain how they grew or why they were in the hearth. That night I dreamed of the forest. I was a woman, my hands caked with dirt, digging up those roots. They pulsed in my grip, warm and slick, and when I bit into one, it screamed. The sap filled my mouth and I saw things. Eyes in the trees, hands reaching from the soil, a hunger that wasn't mine. I woke up in a cold sweat, my tongue stinging like I'd bitten it. Marcus was outside the tent staring at the forest. "Did you hear it?" he asked. "The trees, they're breathing." I didn't hear anything, but the air felt wrong, like it was watching us. The next day we found Marcus digging in the cave, his hands raw, his eyes feverish. He'd uncovered more roots, fresh ones growing through the bones. "They're still here, Sarah," he said, his voice shaking. "They want us to eat." I should have stopped him, but I was curious too. We tested the roots and the results got stranger. They weren't just parasitic, they were symbiotic, feeding on the blood of the people who ate them, binding them to the forest. The painting started to make sense. The tribe wasn't just eating the roots for food. They were eating them to become part of something bigger, something alive, something that owned them. The dreams got worse. I saw the tribe, their bodies thin and trembling, gathered around the hearth. They ate the roots and the forest answered. Vines crept into the cave, wrapping around their arms, their legs, their throats. They didn't fight it. They welcomed it, offering their own flesh to the roots, letting the sap mingle with their blood. And then I saw it, a shape in the trees, not human, not animal, but endless, its roots stretching into the earth like veins. It was hungry and it was patient. Marcus disappeared on the third night. We found his gear near a tree outside the cave, its bark oozing red sap. The tree was covered in carvings, hands, mouths, eyes, just like the paintings. The ground around it was soft, like it had been dug up and filled in. I didn't want to know what was under there, but I heard it, a faint rhythmic thump, like a heartbeat. We left the next day, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was following me. The lab burned down a week later, destroying the root samples. The official report blamed faulty wiring, but I know better. I know what those people ate 50,000 years ago. They ate the roots to join the forest. They ate their own to feed it. And the sap. It was the forest's blood binding them forever. I thought I'd escaped, but last month I found a root in my garden pulsing under the soil. I didn't plant it. The forest is still hungry, and it knows my name.